Patrol EMTs, powered by RPT Commercial. Rick's Pro Truck. Trucks live here. ricksprotruck.com. We're ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. And we welcome in Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. I'm a favorite on the Genes Page board. And, right? I mean, nobody loves the Out of Bounds show and Bow Bounds like the Genes Page crew. But Steve Robertson, the Boneyard Podcast, Genes Page, 247 Sports. Mississippi State at Florida this weekend. Is there a path for a win, especially without a dual threat QB? As we see time and time again every week throughout the country, if you got one, you got a chance to make some stuff happen. Steve Robertson, good morning. Welcome in. As you've looked at this matchup, the Florida defense is their strength. They've been hit and miss on offense, but they have talent. As you look at this matchup, what is the one within the matchup, what jumps out at you?
Well, there are a few things. The one thing that I would say is I don't know how dual threat DJ Lagway is these days. He has been a little bit banged up too, so they've wanted him to be more of a pocket passer. And as you saw against LSU, that was a struggle. They've started games really well. They have scored on the opening drive 5 of 6 games. The one exception is Miami. But when things have to go off script a little bit, Lagway struggled a little bit. And I think that's where State's got to really get out of the gate. You can't get down 2 scores in this game and expect to win. The defense is too good. So it's imperative for State, and State's had some success scoring in their first drive as well. You've got to be able to sustain that opening punch, and you've got to be able to run the football. And last year, Davin Booth had a really big game against Florida, and I think that is absolutely the key in this one. State has to be able to run the football and stay on schedule.
Okay, yeah, I agree. All right, so, and you don't have a threat at quarterback to run it, so that's going to make it extremely difficult. And really, they've been doing this for some time, Steve, really since Nick Fitzgerald. When State wins, they win with Fitz, Dak, Ralph, Sleepy, some others. They were able to generate 16 wins, as you know, over 2 years under Leach, but he's a freak, and that offense worked with anybody. Do you think in the off week that they will drum up 6 to 8 plays for Kamario Taylor against Florida so that they can actually help Booth a little bit, knowing that the defense can't just focus on, like when Shapen's in there, they can dial in on Booth because they know that Blake's not a threat to run. How do you see it?
Yeah, well, I think even if Blake's in there, you got to run him a little bit. But, Kamario has a package. And, I think especially in short yardage and red zone situations, you have to have him in there. But I think it would be an interesting wrinkle if you just, brought him out there around midfield and let him throw the football a little bit too. That's the thing is you got to keep defenses honest. And, Blake's athletic enough, but, Blake, again, with his injury history, you just don't want to put him out there and have him take unnecessary hits. And so with Kamario in the game, you have to account for all 11 players. And I think that is an aspect that maybe Jeff Levy will use this week. But, when you go back and look at what they did last year against Florida, it was a game until it wasn't a game late, right? And so is this Florida team in a better spot than they were last year, 1-2 when they came to start the last year? They're 2-4 right now, and there are rumors out there that Billy Napier is going to be fired, win or lose. And if I'm a Mississippi State guy, and I am, I like the distraction. I don't care if those rumors are true or not.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference. But if they're in the wind, they're in the wind. And you never know how a team is going to react to that. Are Florida players, absolutely loyal and supportive of Billy Napier? I don't know. But when you're 2-4 and you're out of the playoff and you're probably competing for, maybe a Tennessee bowl game, how motivated they're going to be, and I think that's the real issue here. Right now, I think Mississippi State wants Florida a lot more than Florida wants Mississippi State, because I think these Florida guys are kind of beat up mentally and emotionally thinking about having to carry the weight. And we saw it with Chris Simonis, right?
Yeah.
you start getting so invested in what's happening with your coach and the headlines, and even if you don't realize it, it becomes a distraction. And so I think that's the thing with State is you just got to go out there and take care of business because all the pressure is on Florida, not on Mississippi State.
I agree with that. Yeah. What's the motivation? Wouldn't you love to? I know you're going to the game. Wouldn't you love to show up and that stadium only be about 70% full because of their frustrations the last few weeks, Steve?
Oh yeah. Number one, the Swamp is a difficult place to play, but everybody talks about that aspect of it. It's tough to play on the road, maybe with the exception of Vanderbilt. It's tough to play on the road everywhere in this league. So anytime that you can have maybe 5, 10, 15, 20,000 fans of the opposition elect not to show up for a home game, I mean, that's always a great thing. Because the most difficult thing to do in SEC football is for the offense to communicate on the road. So if you're able to communicate at a better level and a higher level, you should be able to execute at a higher level.
Yeah. Steve Robertson on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. Florida's laying 9.5 against Mississippi State. Is that too many, Steve?
I think it is. I think State will cover. And, State's covered every game this year except for A&M. And, at the end of the day, though, it's about winning ball games. And, the bigger question is, I think, is can Mississippi State win this game? They can, but I think you're going to need some help from Florida. I think you got to be able to win a turnover battle. Maybe a scenario where you got to score maybe a non-offensive touchdown. Maybe it's a pick six. Maybe it's a punt return. But, I don't think State's going to win a shootout with Florida. I think, defensively, you've got to be able to stay out of that. If this game, it may be a scenario where the first team to 20 may win this football game. Because I think if you watch Lagway's post-game press conferences after A&M, he was clearly frustrated.
Yeah.
And they referenced he had, and I hate to call it a meltdown, but he had a blow-up on the sidelines against Texas A&M late in that game. And, they just can't finish. And that's really been the issue all year with Florida is that they come out and get the early lead or they're at least in a tie ball game. That A&M game was 14-14, right? And then you look at the end of it, you basically get blown out of the game. And so that becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy when you start thinking, okay, we're good out of the gate, but we can't get across the finish line. That's why I think it's so imperative for State to get out of the gate early, too, to let some doubt creep into their minds, but to instill some confidence in your own offense. Okay,
well, how do they get to 20 to 24 points? Without a playmaker at quarterback, Shapen's pretty accurate. So he's either going to have a deadly accurate day or Booth's going to have to go off, right?
Yeah, I think that aspect is probably true. Well, Marcel Reed didn't have a lot of run yards last week either, but there's always the threat to run, right? I mean, and sometimes the perception is greater than the reality of it, right? If you have to respect the possibility that he may run, you keep linebackers honest, right? And so I think really the difference in this ball game is going to be Mississippi State's ability to run against Florida, and then State's ability to kind of slow that Florida running game down, which hadn't been great. I mean,
which is weird because Ball is really talented, Steve.
Well, not only that, but Billy Napier, that was what he was known for,
right?
Is to put together. When he was at UL Lafayette, and granted, it's the Sun Belt, I get it, I understand the nickname, but they were probably the most physical team in that league year in and year out because they ran the football and rotated three backs who were very talented and just kind of kept you constantly in a third and short situation, and over the course of a 60-minute ball game, they just wore people down. And you would think with Florida's ability to be a top 10 recruiter year in and year out that you'd have a stable of running backs. But for some reason, they don't.
Yeah. Okay. Injuries. All right. You want to walk us through Albert Reese, Isaac Smith, and others, Steve?
Yeah, we'll find out a lot tonight when the availability report comes out. Of course, Fluff Bockwell is out this week. I mean, Jeff Levy said on Monday, well, he's doubtful. I mean, that's not breaking any news there. I mean, we all kind of know where that stands. But he wanted Isaac and Albert Reese both to make it through a Wednesday practice. And so, the night the availability report comes out, I suspect both of them will be listed as questionable. And then we'll kind of see how they progress throughout the week. But, I think that if you're looking at the Isaac Smith situation, I think you're somewhat encouraged because of how well Tony Mitchell played against Texas A&M. There wasn't a big drop-off there. I thought Tony Mitchell did some really good things. The big concern, of course, is Albert Reese, because that puts you in a situation where you're playing musical chairs again. Yes, you get the benefit of the open date, but when you got guards playing tackle, you know, and guys having a flip sides and that sort of stuff, it's a very negative scenario for everybody, because, you know, communication, cohesion are so important, and going on the road and playing a team that is more talented than you, even though they don't have the same record as you. Florida is the more talented team playing at home. So Mississippi State has to execute at a very, very high level.
Yeah. There was one more I was supposed to ask you about from a listener, but I can't find the text. All right. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. It sounds the Florida defense. You and I talked about the Florida defense in the compared to the A&M defense, and you mentioned that they don't bring as much pressure, but they're damn sure stout up front. But wouldn't you say there's a lot of similarities as far as the way they're built between the Florida and A&M defenses, Steve?
Yeah, I absolutely. From like a physical attribute standpoint, I mean, yeah, Florida checks all the boxes. As far as personnel, but they've got 9 sacks this year. State has 8. You know, so they're not pass rushing with the same intensity that perhaps Tennessee and Texas A&M are. And I think that's something Mississippi State has to exploit. You've got to be able to stand up a little bit, because if you're Florida, you're thinking, okay, well, Mississippi State kind of got overwhelmed a little bit at times against Texas A&M. We've got to be able to do that. I just don't know if they have that bell cow up front that can facilitate that type of game plan. And I think that's, okay. We talk about it all the time. You've got to keep Blake Shapen upright. And
he's got to get the ball out too, Steve. You know, I mean.
Absolutely. But he's also got to have more than the second half to throw it. I mean, that was what happened. I think it was so demoralizing early in that A&M game, the very first drive of the game, to give up 2 sacks. Now, you don't give up a bunch the rest of the game, but there was pressure throughout, and it was because you had a patchwork offensive line. And I think you got to get creative at times too. You got to move them around the pocket. You got to do some things to kind of, you know, set up matchups that are advantageous, but also too, you got to make sure Blake Shapen has time to throw the football.
Well, Levy's supposed to be an offensive savant. Let's go. I mean, you know, him taking the snap and standing there like a statue, I don't think is going to work. You know, down at Florida, or really against anybody else going forward with this schedule. I can't believe we've got a listener who actually wants to ask you this question. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. I don't even know if you've looked at this. So, because you're spending 15 hours a day on Mississippi State football, and y'all are doing a great job with your content on genespage.com. But I'll throw it out. If you had to give it a guess right now, who do you think the starting rotation is going to be for Mississippi State baseball? I'm not kidding. I have a text from someone on that. So you may think I'm crazy, but I'm just telling you what a listener wants your best guess.
It's so funny, you know, people, listen, we love football, but Mississippi State's a baseball school that loves football. And you know, we kind of have a fair weather relationship with men's basketball sometimes, which has to change, right? And we've got to be more and more committed to basketball. But I think it's Thomas Valenkas on Friday, probably Ryan McPherson on Saturday, and I would probably go William Kirk on Sunday, or Duke Stone. I think there's still some things to figure out, obviously. But, you know, we cover this very extensively. And, you know, we talked to the staff and things of that nature. But I would have been at the scrimmage last night, but like everybody else in Mississippi, I'm kind of dealing with the crud, as they say in South Mississippi. But, yeah, I mean, I think Valenkas has been great. Ryan McPherson has been great, you know. And so, you know, the thing that we talk about all the time, though, is the teams that have special seasons are the teams that identify a third starter early and teams that get production from the bottom third of the order. And based on what we have seen from this team in the fall, Mississippi State should be able to do both of those very, very easily this year. I think this team is as deep as any Mississippi State team has ever been.
Wow. Okay. Steve Robertson, see, you knew he was going to come through. Here he is. He's fighting the crud. He's covering football 15 hours a day. He goes to every single game. Of course, he goes to every single baseball game. And he's able to pull that just boom and give my listener, my texter, a little bit of ammo for fall. How much longer, speaking of Steve Robertson, how much longer does fall ball go? I don't even know.
Yeah, we got a couple more weeks, and it's interesting too. Like I asked O'Connor about that in the beginning, and he said he kind of likes to get it done earlier, just because it gives everybody a little chance to kind of rest, and you get through all your finals for the fall and things like that. But it gives the staff an opportunity to kind of recruit, but also to evaluate where they are. Now this is going to be a different year because you've got the designated student athlete portal that opens up. You may have some guys you designated as DSA that have the ability to transfer out in December and play somewhere else in January. And so I think that's an aspect of it. But more times moving forward, when there is a hard cap on a roster, you're going to have to make some cuts, So I think getting fall ball done, getting your evaluations done early is probably best for everybody. So it's an atypical year this year, but, there'll be a Pensacola this week. I think that's a super cool thing, too. It's like, and it's almost kind of poetic. Florida State's the team that ends, last season, and then you're going to open up, with a scrimmage down in a sold-out scrimmage at Pensacola, and that kind of helps Florida State's on the road at Stanford this week in football, but, a lot of Bulldogs going to be in Pensacola for baseball.
I forgot about that. So that's down in their AA ballpark in Pensacola?
Yeah, that's down at the Wahoos.
That's where Tanner Allen was.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to stream it or not. I mean, you think if it's a sellout game, you ought to stream it, make some money off that too. I mean, but there's a lot of people, like, we're thinking, man, it'd be great if we could do both. And we'll have Mike Nemeth down there covering baseball for us, and the rest of us will be in Gainesville covering football. But, we're happy to be able to do both. I mean, it's important to our fans, so it's important to us. But what a cool thing, to be able to go play, on the road, and our fans have an opportunity to go see, another prestigious program in college baseball. And it's only 2 sevens, and it'll be a fun day, and we'll see how things go. But it'll be the first look for a lot of our fans at a very unique venue against a quality opponent. And yes, it is just a scrimmage, and so they're going to play to win, but you got to get work for guys. But I think it's a super cool thing that State and Florida State were able to pull this off for both fan bases.
Yeah, that is cool. I like that. Having some of these exhibition games in the fall, especially against a really good program in the Florida State Seminoles. So the last thing I remember is Jake Gautreaux getting tossed. Did Parker get tossed too, or did just Gautreaux get tossed in that last game? I can't remember, Steve.
Was one of them. And then Jake, I think that was Jake's goodbye moment. And if you remember how bad that game was officiated, I mean, it was ridiculous.
Awful.
It was terrible. And I say all the time, we take this for granted, but the worst officiating in college sports is women's basketball. I mean, it's not even close. But when you have a bad home plate umpire, it doesn't matter how good the rest of the crew is, right? And we saw it with Morris Hodges a couple of years ago at A&M, and he runs up and bumps Hunter Hines, but that game was pitiful. I mean, and, sometimes our sources will give us some TrackMan data, and that particular game was one of the worst strike zones of the year in Mississippi State.
That's incredible. Oh, my gosh. All right, so I didn't hear you. Did Gautreaux – we had turned you down. There's a little reverb in the phone. What did Gautreaux and Parker get tossed, or just Gautreaux in that last game?
Just Jake.
Okay.
Just Jake.
Okay.
Jake did, and North Sullivan, and but yeah, Parker didn't get tossed.
Okay. All right. I think it's cool that O'Connor decided to retain Parker. What about you?
Oh, I do too, and I think O'Connor would agree. I asked him one of our last media opportunities, what's it been like with Justin Parker, last few months, and I think he feels even better about that decision today because I think he's figured out philosophically they're very similar, and kind of the things they want to do. And, pitching guys are interesting, right? I mean, you
sure.
get, O'Connor's a guy with a pitching pedigree, as is Justin Parker, and sometimes those guys are a little bit kind of prickly at times. Hey, we're going to do these things my way.
Right.
But, the thing that O'Connor brought up is just how well Parker has been able to get to know the kids. To have the opportunity to kind of figure out who they are as people. And, he knows his guys that he brought in. And then, to see Thomas Valikas and those guys kind of make a jump with Parker kind of pulling the strings a little bit, I think it's just reinforced what Brian O'Connor did in the beginning.
I still owe you a steak dinner from me thinking that Coleman Hutzler was going to get fired. And he was at one point, but some things got, shuffled the deck. And you said no, and we bet on the air, and I still have to take you to, somewhere, Older Brother Bistro or Restaurant Tyler or somewhere Taste to get a steak, don't I?
You do, but I think that says a little bit about our relationship. But I have not called them that marker over and over and over again. I just let you do it, and I kind of like people being in debt to me.
Sure.
So
okay,
I'll run down to Jackson, and we'll go somewhere big. We'll go to Tico, something like that.
Okay,
we'll have a good time.
All right, that sounds good, Steve. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
See you, bud.
All right, Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. We made a bet on the air. I said Coleman Hutzler would be let go. He said he wouldn't. And then the rest is history. Now, Mike McIntyre and Paul Rhodes are your defensive coordinators. We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Let's talk about the Older Brother Bistro for a minute, Jackson Meadows, and the fact that Barton Dinkins is one of the best chefs in the SEC. He opened up Two Brothers, and boy, did they pick a great year. 2014, Mississippi State goes to number one. And they opened it up in a place that's about as big as a closet, but super cool vibe. Then they build this unbelievable building and put Two Brothers in there. They got wraparound porches and decks and outside areas. It's become the go-to place for the former football and baseball players, which has worked out. Jeffrey Simmons, Dak Prescott, Jake Mangum, and Tanner Allen live there when they're in town. And so we've told you about the iconic wings at Two Brothers. Then they open up Older Brother Bistro. And they roll out this Reuben. It's one of the best Reubens I've ever had in my life. The muffaletta is unbelievable. The fried crab claws are amazing. He's got a lox bagel at Older Brother Bistro in the Cotton District in Starkville that is divine. Check out everything that Barton Dinkins is doing at Older Brother Bistro in Starkville. And, of course, the iconic, one of the coolest dive bars in the SEC, Two Brothers in the Cotton District.